This is a new feeling. Pride in someone else.
Welcome back, everybody. It's the weekly recap with your buddy Orange Hat here, and I got with me Novus Renaissance. How are you?
Hail to all from the Dorvadorverse and pre-flood Earth with our supernatural fantasy special integration with the Orange Hat. Doing well.
Yes. So, let's say hello to the chat. We got a lovely 5 topics plus a subtopic with one of those topics. So, bear with us tonight, folks, because we are going to get into it. Hello to Vanya, and there's Novus. So, let's get into with a little bit of further ado. If you want to support my channel, I thank everyone who has gotten me to 1,500 subs. Thank you so much. You are all freaking awesome. Also, if you can, keep giving me some more screen time so I can finally get to 4,000 hours. Once I get to 4,000 hours, I will have the option to fully monetize. I will not monetize until 2025. I will keep that promise that I will not monetize until fully eligible and for a full year in order to monetize, because also I had no choice but to keep that promise. And even if I had the ability not to keep the promise, I would still keep the promise, because a promise is a promise. Does that make sense to everybody? Anyway, so also, folks, I will be getting another theme stream of originals versus reboots, which will be Fantastic Four 2005 and Fantastic Four 2015 on Tuesday afternoon, 1:30 p.m. on Tuesday. Wednesday, me and Mara are discussing Underworld 1, the unrated edition. And we will be discussing Thursday, the 1981 My Bloody Valentine. And that will be on my channel at 8 p.m. Then the next week will be Underworld 2 on hers on Wednesday, and My Bloody Valentine 2009, I believe, the remake. So even the singles are going to have a original versus remake theme. So with that out of the way, hello to Geek Detective Pierce. How you doing, buddy? And so let's get this show on the road. Our first topic for the night is everybody's favorite topic. Gina Carano is suing Disney. So this one comes from Pounding in the Comics. Now, I gave my original thoughts on this, and my thoughts have since evolved since then. I no longer believe that she may be a sellout. It all really depends on what her choices are. I do not, or I have been, or had it explained that it could just be a litigation ruse or a litigation ploy to try and earn back pay in order to be recast in the role. Now, if she is trying to actually get back into the role, I do have a problem with it. But let's get into this. Gina Carano receives assistance from Elon Musk, files wrongful termination lawsuit against Disney and Lucasfilm over her Mandalorian firing. Artists do not sign away our rights as American citizens when we enter into employment. You are very true on that. So let's get into this. So Gina Carano has officially announced that thanks to the assistance provided by Elon Musk, she is now moving to sue both Disney and Lucasfilm over her abrupt and now infamous firing from The Mandalorian. The former Cara Dune actress first announced her intent to take the House of Mouse and its subsidiary studio to court, the full filing of which can be read here on February 6th via a lengthy post made to her official Twitter account. After my 20 years of building a career from scratch, yada, yada, yada. If you really want to read it, folks, it is on her thing right here, her Twitter account. Essentially, she goes over how they have basically given discriminatory practice and privilege to her male co-stars and others. She cites Mark Hamill. She cites Pedro Pascal as both doing extremely divisive and political postings, and yet the second she did something slightly similar, she got fired. And not only fired, they wanted to publicly shame her. They wanted a group of LGBTQ employees from Disney to sit down with her on a Zoom call privately, and actually basically shame her into making her apologize and whatnot. She refused to do that. So yeah, they fired her, and then they started railroading her. Now let's continue on with the article. But yeah, don't tell me at all that Gina Carano, or if she had agreed to that thing, that Disney would have not, or don't tell me that Disney would not have leaked that to the public.
There's also a significant. Most people don't realize there's a significant impact that's come with this whole situation, because we have George Lucas founding ultimately his company with the birth of Star Wars that premieres in 1977. 10 Oscars nominations, 7 Oscars. Should have won Best Picture, but it didn't. Oh well. And Best Director. So in this whole time frame, you don't have anybody ever fired in the Star Wars franchise ever.
Nope.
And the irony of this whole situation, as you know, you get in to actually review the actual evidence, the texts, or I guess the tweets and stuff, is nobody has ever been fired corporately to public knowledge for anything of this nature, or at all. So in addition to that, since particularly the issue of women is so prominent in the last 10 years, you have a woman ultimately signing authorization to have a woman fired. So Gina Carano has actually made infamous history for the Disney Corporation, as they have actually fired a woman by a woman. And I think that's one of the most extraordinary things about this. Is it's just like the cherry on top as far as this whole narrative of wanting to be accepting. It's like you literally had a woman fire a woman. So, you know, that is just something that's extraordinary within this backdrop.
Yeah. And not only that, Gina Carano is getting, or people are going after Gina like trash or freaking cum rags, like tabloid rags, but I call it a cum rag, the Mary Sue, because they're pissed off that Gina Carano is throwing women under the bus for obviously fake things, and they actually go after Bounding in the comics. So yeah, the Mary Sue, which I'm not going to share their article, they actually went after Bounding, citing that Bounding is a false information website. So hey, man, boys at Bounding, if you want, maybe look into filing defamation against the Mary Sue. I mean,
the irony is Gina Carano has Mary Sue as plot armor, you know, and the actors and the actresses that play these characters, at the end of the day, they're just marching orders. So you talk about Daisy Riddle, she might be a great actress, but she's just doing her role that she's told. But Gina Carano has no plot armor, so her character is actually, this character arc is actually getting more of a hero's journey with the trials and everything that hardens that individual to face the quote dragons and the monsters at the end of the saga.
Yep. Now she also did say that that people claimed that she said that Republicans were being treated like the Jews, which this is the thing that they were referencing. Jews were beaten in the streets not by Yazid's soldiers, but by their neighbors, even by children, because history is edited. Most people today don't realize that that to get to the point where Yazid soldiers could easily round up thousands of Jews, the government first made their own neighbors hate them simply for being Jews. How is this any different from hating someone for their political views? And yes, this is a child and other kids beating this poor woman simply for being Jewish. This was during World War II, or before actually
That's
World
and
War
that's
II
actually
even.
Jordan Peterson has brought this up. There's different talks. Is that the collectivization of the society mindset is that most people today, when they look at something like this situation with the Holocaust and with the anti-Semitism coming out of Nazi Germany, they think, oh, I wouldn't do that. But if you're in the majority mindset, if you're in the collective, go get along with society, you actually are more probable and probably would have done those things. And this has been an extraordinary time within the culture, because if you're essentially calling for someone to be canceled, what are you asking for them to be done? You're asking for them to essentially be deleted off a platform. Well, digital to real is a very fine line when the attitude is there to get rid of them. When in fact, if you take a couple more steps, you're looking at essentially a replica of what happened in the 1930s and 40s.
Hey, Nick Cat Media, how you doing? So here's a bit where we're not covering a whole tweet, but instead covering the rest of it. Notably, the second and far more cheeky recap of the chain of events which led to this legal action was provided by Carano and her legal team in the introduction of the lawsuit a short time ago in a galaxy far, far, or not so far, far away. Defendants made it clear that only one orthodoxy in thought, speech, or action was acceptable in their empire, and that those who dared to question or failed to fully comply would not be tolerated. Opened the actress, or opined the actress, I don't know. Official legal filings with the U.S. Central District Court of California. And so it was with Carano. After 2 highly acclaimed seasons of The Mandalorian as Rebel Ranger Cara Dune, Carano was terminated from her role as swiftly as her character's peaceful home planet Valderon was destroyed by the Death Star in the earlier Star Wars films. And all this because she dared voice her own opinions on social media platforms and elsewhere.
Poor Alderaan.
Yeah. And stood up to the online bully mob who demanded her compliance with their extreme progressive ideology. So yes, Gina Carano is suing Disney and Lucasfilm, and part of it does actually state that one of her stipulations in the suit is to be recast in the role that she was unjustly terminated from. Now, folks, I am all for voicing your opinions. I am all for all of that. Don't get me wrong. I am a constitutionalist. However, that was the one thing that did worry me when she filed this lawsuit, that she wants to go back to the very business that defamed her, that put out a smear campaign against her. I'm sorry, but I do not think that that is okay. And because it shows that you have a penchant for sadism or masochism, because you literally want to go back to or who would want to go back to being abused like that? Just because you have a legal stipulation on paper does not mean that people are going to sneer at you behind your back. And people are not going to seek to mistreat you again. But if it is indeed just a litigation ploy to earn the back pay and whatnot, awesome. But if she does, in fact, go back to Disney, I will still respect Gina Carano. However, I will not support Disney, Star Wars, or anything like that. Even if she goes back, I'm sorry, but my support ends with her suing Disney. I do not support going back to the company that you are suing for their abuse that they put upon you.
Well, and that's an interesting point, because we made sure that we listened to your whole video, because sometimes people will talk about things people said without actually like reading their article or whatnot. And there is an angle with this. The points that you said are well spoken about. Like, why would you go back? Gina Carano, Miss Carano, might have an angle where she wants to have Disney say, we'll give you a film, or we'll give you a deal for her to back off, kind of similar with Johnny Depp. Or maybe that becomes part of their branding, because the tricky thing of this situation is that Disney, while it still has got its own internal issues, it is a major it is a major brand, and what she might need or might have in mind is to leverage that brand to get her back on a quality content. But then the points that you make, if you go back into that environment, you're setting yourself up where they can nickel and dime you out. It's kind of like, oh, well, we're not going to get you on anything big this time. But like, oh, you were technically in violation of they'll legal her out. So I think it is a very risky strategy for Miss Carano to do that. But I think there could be an angle for it, but you're not going to be able to protect yourself from technicalities if you go back into the home turf. And it probably is better just to cut because, we've talked about before, if you keep supporting the platforms that bring this stuff into the cauldron of story, you're not going to be able to change it. And you gotta cut and branch and we have a point about Elon Musk we'll bring in the next round after you go on.
Yeah. But here's something that you wanted to share: how Olivia de Havilland took on the studio system and won. So for those of you who don't know about Gone with the Wind, Von Babazon had a memorable summer job in 1976, and then 21-year-old worked on craft services for Airport 77, a disaster movie in which that included Oscar winners legends such as Jack Lee, George, and James. But the grand dame on set was Olivia de Havilland, who, despite her stature, spent most of the production soldiering through one grueling scene after another. Why don't you give us the lowdown on this?
Yeah, and we don't have to read the whole article. You can actually go down to the point where it says in 1943, de Havilland's 7-year contract ended. So this is a fascinating case. So Novus Renaissance is not making any legal advice of any kind. We are making an analysis of a historical precedent set. That is a disclaimer. However, Elon Musk, Miss Carano, it might be interesting for your teams to look at this because we'll tie in Elon Musk to this as well, because I think that Elon Musk is using this in his bid against Bob Iger. Again, purely speculative theory based upon our open source analysis of information. That disclaimer being set, you heard it on the Orange Hat and the Novus Renaissance first. So Olivia de Havilland basically got into this argument with Jack Warner and Warner Brothers because this is the age of the 30s and 40s when the individual was the studio boss and they controlled everything. And essentially Warner Brothers had locked her into her contract where they were basically getting down to this technicality of what does 7 years mean? Does that mean like 7 actual working days, excluding the weekends and holidays? That's the approach that Warner was taking. And then de Havilland was saying like, no, it's 7 calendar years. And so I'm done. Well, they were basically getting on this. What's important about this case is it upheld the artist. And I'll just read it. In 1943, de Havilland's 7-year contract ended, but Warner Brothers announced she was not yet free to move on. The studio claimed that she owned them additional 6 months for the time she was under suspension for refusing to perform in certain films. De Havilland fought back, suing.
I think you botted out there, Novus.
It had been mostly unsuccessful. In the 1930s, Davis tried to get out of her contract at Warner Brothers by suing studio in the UK, only to lose and be forced to return to Hollywood in debt with a reputation in the press for being spoiled and ungrateful. When Olivia took Warner Brothers to court, she was basically taking on the system. Okay, this is setting the stage in parallel with Gina Carano, with Elon Musk, paired against Disney. And this is the angle that it goes with. It's not about it's not about getting released out of your contract. This is taking almost the same principle, saying you don't have the right to confine my freedoms by your dictatorial process of the films or your ideology of films. So if this ends up getting on the same level, this could essentially strike a major blow for actors and actresses across all the platforms because the politics swings. It swings in pendulums. So everybody's on one side of a spectrum now, but then you go back into the 1950s and 60s and all the Hollywood, people that were upcoming there were complaining about how I've been blacklisted as a communist or a Marxist. So it swings back and forth who holds the reins. But this ended up being calling the de Havilland law decision, and this could end up being something similar where Gina Carano in this process ends up setting a major legal victory, since Elon Musk has got the money to back this up and to perpetuate this, that actually ends up doing something for artists. And essentially what happened with de Havilland is she became a free agent, so she could work for anybody. And Gina Carano might establish a protection saying, just because an artist is publicly tweeting about something, that's separate and distinct from their legal obligations as a member of a project. I wish it will change all the contracts and all the laws. So this is definitely an interesting approach, but I'll pause here before I move on to the final point with Elon Musk.
Well, actually, we are ready to go on to the next topic. So if you want to get on with or talk about the thing with Elon Musk, go right ahead.
Okay, in closing, with Elon Musk is that we think that this is ultimately Elon Musk. Gina Carano is just she's a small fish at the end of the day. She's not a major star. You get down to it. I think Elon Musk is interested in the possibility of buying aspects of Disney, maybe the MCU or Star Wars, maybe buying some of the IPs. Gina Carano might be his angle to strike. Again, this is our speculation, to strike at Bob Iger, to continue to degrade confidence in him, where he either can work with another member or maybe himself take enough shares where he can be a board member or chairman of the board. Because this is an angle that he definitely can use, but it will be fascinating to see how this plays out. So there's more to this, or as Peter Cullen would say, there's more than meets the eye than just Peter Cullen. All right, that's it.
Yeah. There's more than meets the eye. Anyway, so that will lead us to our second story, which is Dakota Johnson slams Hollywood. So the release of Madam Web, folks, coming, I do believe it's sometime in March or sometime in February. I believe it's actually coming up soon. Dakota Johnson, who plays Madam Web, says Hollywood is effing bleak and streaming execs don't trust creative people, calls Nepo baby talk annoying and boring. Wow, folks. Dakota Johnson. Yeah. Who'd have thought on that one? So she sounded off on the industry in a new interview with L'Officiel ahead of their release of the superhero tentpole Madam Web. The actor reflected on bringing her indie drama Daddy-O to the film festival. You were going to say something?
Well, I'd say, what the working title for this would have been? This Madam Web, 50 Shades of Web.
She was actually pretty good in that.
Not bad given the subject, but it's the grim dark version of The Notebook, I suppose.
I mean, I read the books and saw the movies in their unrated editions and own them. I'm not afraid to admit that. I actually think that the movies are not that bad, and it's not just because of the sexual content. It's actually, I thought the stories were actually pretty well done told.
A broken man restored.
But anyway, hey, hello to Kristen Freites. And yeah, Elon is using this for discovery, if you want my opinion. And Kristen Freites, Gina Carano left Deadpool 2 because of creative differences. Oh, interesting. So, getting back into this article, Daddy-O Film Festival last year, where she says it took a whole lot of effort to get it sold, despite starring her and Oscar winner Sean Penn in the lead roles. We made a movie called Daddy-O that was sold to Telluride, to Sony Classics, which was amazing, but it took a lot of fighting to get it made. People are just too afraid, and I'm like, why? What's going to happen if you do something brave? It just feels like nobody wants to do, or nobody knows what to do, and everybody's afraid. That's what it feels like. Everyone who makes decisions is afraid. They want to do the safe thing, and the safe thing is really boring. Yeah, they want to do the safe thing, folks, which is basically the woke thing. DEI, get rid of whites, and all that other shit. That's basically what they want to do, and it is boring. People are sick and tired of the DEI nonsense, in my opinion.
It's the same
And
thing
actually,
back in
more back.
1960, 70, pre-Star Wars Hollywood. It's the
Mhm.
studio system, and they're just trying to make these flavors, and it's not sustainable.
Yep. Johnson said that she is discovering that it is really effing bleak in this industry. It is majorly disheartening. The people who run streaming platforms don't trust creative people or artists to know what's going to work. And that is just going to make us implode. It's really heartbreaking. It's just effing so hard. It's so hard to get anything made. All the stuff I'm interested in making is really different. And it's unique and it's very forward in wherever it is. The actor's Madam Web press tour also took her to NBC's Today, where she expressed her early frustrations with the Nepo baby discourse. Johnson is the daughter of actors Don Johnson and Melanie Griffith. During her recent Saturday Night Live hosting, Johnson poked fun at her Nepo baby legacy. When that first started, I found it to be incredibly annoying and boring. If you're a journalist, then write about something else. That's just lame. The opportunity to make fun of it, I jumped at. While Johnson broke through in the studio, backed 50 Shades trilogy, she earned acclaim for herself as an actor in independent dramas such as A Bigger Splash and The Lost Daughter, among other acclaimed titles. She recently told Games Radar that she never thought she'd end up in the superhero world as the lead of Madam Web. When the script came along, I loved the idea of a superhero being a young woman whose mind was extremely powerful. I like the dynamic between her and these three young women, how they genuinely protect and support and care for each other. Johnson said about taking a chance on the superhero genre, and so it just seemed different to me, and it was way more grounded and real and gritty. I just thought it was an interesting way to experience that world. Johnson
The
told
fi-
Entertainment. Say
I
what?
was just at the 50 Shades of Grey world. It's just
Yeah,
Madam Web, 50 Shades of Grey, Daddy-O. It's so many memes, so many memes.
sure. I mean, if you think about it that way, I don't. Johnson and the Entertainment Weekly earlier this month that making Madam Web was a wild experience, and she had never acted in so many CGI-oriented scenes before. I've never really done a movie where you are on a blue screen and there's fake explosions going off and someone's going explosion and you have to act like there's an explosion. That to me was absolutely psychotic. Wow. And I was like, I don't know if this is going to be good at all. I hope that I did an okay job. Johnson will be back in the world of indie films soon as the star of a new A24 backed romantic comedy from Past Lives, Oscar nominee Celine Song. Johnson is headlining the film alongside Chris Evans and Pedro Pascal. Madam Web premieres in theaters February 14th from Sony. So, yeah, she actually called out Hollywood basically saying, you guys are boring and you need to give originality a chance. Except that originality coming from, or there is no originality in Hollywood anymore, Dakota. As much as I think that you are on the right track, they need to actually allow people to take a little bit of a license with series like Marvel, kind of like what I'm doing with my Dark Marvel story, with the with Avengers Alliance storylines somewhat being flipped into a darker universe called the Overlords Alliance.
Fan fiction
And
of the year right there.
I've actually shared it. Am I still okay? Am I still here, folks?
Came back.
Okay, good. So hit me up at OrangeHat2185 and I will send you a copy of the story that I have written out for the Marvel story. Now let's close this one.
Miss Johnson is
So
learning basically with the Soviet. It's the Soviet model now, where basically it's this behemoth structure at the top that's saying you have to do these subjects and you can't deviate.
yeah,
And so all the creativity is gone. You have to stick exactly to what the narrative is. And the irony is that even artists that may have a certain philosophical or political uh, view of the world, when they're doing their craft in the entertainment industry, they want to be able to, hey, can I do an ad lib line? Can I, do my own thing? And it's like, no, stick to it. No new ideas, nothing. Just do what we tell you to do. And after time, it's like I have no meaning in this, because ultimately I'm just essentially an AI bot. I just do what I'm told. And that is starting to come out. And it's like, well, this is going to be something that the industry may not recover from, because again, they can't print
Nope.
their own money. And it's a luxury. At the end of the day, the entertainment industry is a luxury industry. It is not needed. You can go back
Yeah.
to the amphitheaters in the woods with plays, and that's it.
Mm-hmm. So with that, moving on to our next topic, which is Disney loses 1.3 million subs after the price hike for Disney Plus. So this is from another article from Bounding into Comics. Shout out to you boys.
This was coming. This downfall was coming.
Oh yeah. So a lot of us who do own Disney Plus, I am, or as anti-Disney as I am, I do have Disney Plus. I have never said that I absolutely don't support them in any sort of shape, way, or form. I do have Disney Plus, and I do have Hulu, the bundle. It is because I compromise in order to have a small bit so I can do more content. And I am also not proud of the fact that I lost a bet with somebody online and had to review the Marvels. Thankfully, I didn't have to do a video review of it. But anyway, if you want to see my Marvels review, go to criticlist.com. To the article here, Disney Plus continues to implode, announces losses of 1.3 million subs following the price hike. So you're telling us people didn't want to pay more money for the subpar television content featuring bastardized interpretations of the favorite characters and storylines? Or Echo?
That's good, man.
Shout out to Spencer, I do believe. Yep, Spencer did this one. And a further
Could they have
blow.
made Captain Carter could they have made Colonel Carter? Could they have done something? Lieutenant Carter?
Yeah.
Could they have done something British? Good Lord.
So, in a further blow to the company's streaming dreams, the House of Mouse has announced that thanks to a number of factors, including the recent price hike, their Disney Plus service has bled a total of 1.3 million subscribers in a 3-month period between two most recent earnings reports. The significant dip in Disney Plus subscriber count was first made public on January 7th, courtesy of the company's chief financial officer, Hugh Johnston, detailing the current status of their streaming operations to attendees of Disney's Q1 2024 earnings call. Johnston informed them that although the company's Hulu platform had gained roughly 1.2 million subscribers in the time since the company's Q4 2020 or 23 earnings call in November, Disney's core subscribers decreased subsequently by 1.3 million. Yeah, if you continue to insult fans and whatnot and put trash on the for content in your streaming platforms, guess what? You are going to lose money.
You're going to lose 1.3 million subscribers and $1 billion.
Yep. According to Johnston, this drop in Disney Plus subscribers was driven by the expected temporary uptick in churn given the recent domestic price increases, as well as the end of the global summer promotion, which offered a new returning users 3-month subscription for just $199. Further, the CFO claims that these impacts were partially offset by strong ad tier net ads due to domestic growth. As well, the launch in certain international markets in the first quarter. Though the individual platform was reportedly having a rough time, Johnston noted that for their overall direct-to-consumer streaming operations had seen its operating income improve by about $850 million versus the prior year and nearly $300 million versus Q4. To this end, the CFO also highlighted how, thanks to the service's aforementioned price increases in October 23, Disney raised the price to Disney's Ad Plus tier by 27% from at $10.99 to $13.99. It had seen an average revenue per user increase of 14 cents versus the prior quarter, and by $1.07 versus the prior year. However, despite this massive drop in subs, Johnston ultimately asserted that in terms of the future, the company was expected net ads of between 5.5 million and 6 million in the second quarter, with a hopeful prediction of 7.5 million domestic subscribers, looking to balance out a predicted decrease in international users. So, as noted above,
very interesting.
That's only if they don't do certain stupid things like continue to push woke nonsense and sexualization of children. As noted above, this is but the latest subscriber-based woe for Disney's flagship streaming service. You say?
Oh, it was just like, to your point. I mean, it's a great point that you bring up, because Disney is now in a double bind because we're in the global age. So everybody outside of the United States and Western Europe, all the other countries that don't have the same values that Disney has overseas that they try to cater to, they can look and see, like, you literally do the opposite in these areas, which directly go against our values, or preferences of skin color in a certain country in Asia that's got over 1 billion people. And so Disney's like, their brand has been globally damaged, internationally across the spectrum, across culture, across nations. And so it's kind of like the game's up. And at the end of the day, if you just are making bland content, there are so many streaming platforms that you don't have an edge on anybody. It's like everybody went their own way. If Netflix was the only one and everybody got behind Netflix and they all took a share and made the streaming cartel, if you will, it would have worked. But everybody pulled out, and it's kind of over in some ways.
Yep. And not only that, folks, them making these claims, that's something that they actually have to say during these meetings. Because if they say, we're looking to losing more money and more subscribers, in reality, that's not going to keep investors interested. But honestly, if you are a shareholder and you saw these sort of numbers and all of this happening, I would have started to sue Disney a long time ago if I was a shareholder. I would have said, I'm going to sue you. You have violated your fiduciary contract. You are in fiduciary breach of contract because you have lost us millions of dollars due to the fact that you wanted to get political and push sexualization on children instead of actually focusing on what the majority of people want, which is shut your fucking mouth about politics and shut your fucking mouth about sexualizing children. Nobody wants to see children learning about sexualized themes in shows. They want to be entertained, and entertainment means not focusing on skin color or sexuality and instead focusing on something that's going to excite the masses. So,
dude,
yeah,
I think you just brought Gandalf in the Rohirrim with you right then, because that was like an epic charge scene.
Yeah. So with that, we're not going to go over the full article. It's just going over more of their woes. Instead, we are going to cut this.
Did you see that? Well, just the highlight. Do you see like the final picture of the article where they have like Captain Carter? I mean, she doesn't even look they can at least draw on it like the original live action studio. Like even the animation that they're drawing, it's like it's just bland. It's a shame because it's
It
like we
is.
have an
It's that
age with
digital.
yeah,
It's that digital shit.
we have so much technology that would enhance like the AI and the human. And I mean, Gone with the Wind, since we talked about Olivia de Havilland, she was Melody in Gone with the Wind. They had a big shot of it was a map painting of basically a southern mansion, and it looks so real. They did so much detail on it that you can't tell that it's not an actual painting. But you know, we're losing the ability to have creation. But oh well. Is it Mr. Bean time?
So, yep, it is Mr. Bean time. So, yeah, folks. According to the UK and the House of Lords, Mr. Bean actor Rowan Atkinson is to blame for for poor electric vehicle sales in the UK. Can you believe that, folks? They
Oh,
decided to
good
blame
Lord.
somebody, a single actor, for their own stupidity.
Madness
So let's get
and
into this article.
stupidity.
Yeah. So after writing an opinion piece about describing electric vehicles as a bit soulless, Mr. Bean actor Rowan Atkinson is blamed in House of Lords for poor EV sales in the UK. Now, in what seems to come right out of the pages of a comedy script, Mr. Bean and Blackadder actor Rowan Atkins has been accused of negatively influencing the sales of the electric vehicles in the United Kingdom. As reported by The Telegraph, the UK's environmental charity Green Alliance told the House of Lords Environment and Climate Change Committee that an opinion piece written by Atkinson last year was damaging the perception of electric vehicles had in the public eye. Well, it's also not just that, folks. I mean, have you looked at all the electric vehicles that have been going on? You've had problems. You don't have enough charging stations. You have vehicles that their batteries are dying quickly in the winter and exploding in the summer. People are dying because they happen to sometimes be in the vehicle as it explodes at random intervals.
People are dying. You know.
Yeah.
That's a minor thing.
This is a vehicle that has killed people. So
here we thought Back to the Future 2. It was in 2015. Yeah. We'd have the flying cars that'd be running off of just compost. Oh well.
Yeah, right. So one of the most damaging articles was the comment piece written by Rowan Atkinson in The Guardian, which has been roundly debunked, the charity accused. In June 2023, Atkins who holds a bachelor's degree in electric and electronic engineering from Newcastle University, wrote an opinion piece for The Guardian, wherein the legendary actor or comedian discussed his experience driving electric vehicles. Editor's note: since its publication, The Guardian has made several edits to Atkinson's piece, which they felt added more context. What follows is the original unedited writing, titled "I Love Electric Vehicles," and was an early adopter, but increasingly I feel duped. The Johnny English star noted, sadly, keeping your old petrol car may be better than buying an EV, though admitting that there are sound environmental reasons to not jump just yet. So Atkinson's explained, I bought my first electric hybrid 18 years ago and my first pure electric car 9 years ago, and notwithstanding our poor electric charging infrastructure, have enjoyed my time with both very much. Electric vehicles may be a bit soulless, but they're wonderful mechanisms, fast, quiet, and until recently, very cheap to run. But increasingly, I feel a little duped. Atkinson's a car enthusiast with a collection described as unrivaled, would also go on to question the government's initiative to ban petrol and diesel cars by 2030, declaring, the problem with the initiative is that it seems to be largely based on conclusions drawn from only one part of the car's operating life. what comes out of the exhaust pipe. Electric cars, of course, have zero exhaust emissions, which is a wonderful development, particularly in respect of air quality in city centers. But if you zoom out a bit and look at the bigger picture that includes the car's manufacturer, the system is very different. The actor cites the 2021 report published by Volvo, noting the car's manufacturers releases figures claiming that greenhouse gases emissions during production of an electric vehicle are 70% higher than when manufacturing a petrol one, inquiring how so. The problem lies with
that. I mean, and that's the irony is you're spending more emissions to produce these than what the car would actually save you. It's like those windmills. You make these monstrosities that destroy nature and the site, and it's like you have to actually have motors that make them run, so they don't basically they maintain themselves.
Yeah. I mean, the problem lies with the lithium-ion batteries fitted currently to nearly all electric vehicles. They're absurdly heavy. Huge amounts of energy are required to make them, and they are estimated to last about only 10 years. Atkinson explained, pointing out it seems a perverse choice of hardware with which to lead the automobile's fight against the climate crisis. There is no climate crisis, folks. It's called climate shift, not climate change. And you can't change, or you cannot do anything about this. Even if you go to net zero emissions tomorrow, it will literally, or in 10 years, you're going to see half a degree change in our global temperature. Half a degree in 10 years. Think about that. Atkinson would later come to the conclusion, increasingly, I'm feeling that our honeymoon with electric cars is coming to an end, and that's no bad thing. We're realizing that a wider range of options need to be explored if we're going to properly address a very serious environmental problem that our use of the motor car has created. Folks, again, when the earth wants to clean itself, a climate shift happens. Now, the last ice age was 10 to 20,000 years ago. And it takes roughly 20,000 more years to enter the next phase, and it will last a long time. Now, here's the thing.
It might also have been in 2016 too. It was pretty cold.
Yeah. And here's the thing, folks. When it comes to these climate shifts, you do see things that are going on today, differences in temperatures, a little bit of polar ice cap melting, also freezing of the polar ice caps as well. Refreezing is actually happening. That's something that a lot of people won't tell you. Also, you will notice that there is some odd weather sometimes. I mean, heck, up here where I live, we sometimes get very, very, very bone-chillingly cold winters, and sometimes we get temperate summers or very hot summers. It all depends on just what the earth wants to do. And it happens not just because of emissions and greenhouse gases and all that other horse shit. It has to do with what the earth is doing to itself. Yes, we are not helping with a lot of the carbon emissions, but what other choices and alternatives have they offered that are environmentally stable and also safe and don't run the risk of killing people?
Have you heard of
you hear all these activists and whatnot saying we need to do this, we need to do that. Yeah, but do we have a solution that will make that viable? No, we don't. So until a solution comes along that is viable, that is able to be done in a way that benefits all of humanity, I'm sorry, I'm keeping my gas guzzler.
Have you heard of Dana Pina? He's known as like the $1 trillion man.
No.
He had a he's a big on the YouTube and the influence and stuff like that. But he actually is a billionaire. He knows a lot of people. he had a great point when he was at like a open conference or something like that. Somebody asked him about the climate change, and it makes perfect sense. So you have everybody that says, we have this big climate change, and we need to be respectful stewards of the environment, and we need to have that respect for it because that's also where we live, and you can't live in a dead world. But if you
Yeah.
actually get into this catastrophic, global climate change and warming, like saying the caps are going to melt and the world's going to be underwater. If you look at all the major financial centers, they're along the coastlines. All the wealthy, on all the richest people live on islands and coastlines. This is the area that would be completely submerged, and it's supposed to happen in the next 20 years. That means there's an existential threat that will wipe out all this land. But they're always building, they're always expanding, and the financial institutions have not moved. So it raises the question, as he simply did, is how serious this is actually really? Because all these billionaires and all of these hundreds of millionaires, they would not be remaining in these places. I mean, you're looking at the financial center of London underwater, and they're not going to move. So, there's a lot of money to be made off of this at the end of the day. And part of the challenges, and it's at the end of the article that you're about to read, is that hey, industries like to slow things down because they can control that, but there are people lined up to make a lot of money off of the green energy, whatever it is.
Yeah. So finishing up, at the time, Atkinson would later come to the conclusion increasingly. At the time, Atkinson came under fire for expressing his informed opinion about this experience driving electric vehicles, with a handful of mainstream media outlets writing alarmist climate change pieces in a desperate attempt to rebuke the actor's comments, including The Guardian, the outlet that published his opinion piece. Inside Climate News, Dan Carano decried Atkinson's conclusion as frustrating for the people who do research on EVs and emissions because it is a familiar trope of fossil fuel aligned groups that have a financial interest in slowing the transition of EVs, and it's based on the misleading view of the data. Actually, it's not, you see. Yeah. And it just keeps going further and further. But anyway, folks, when it comes to this whole climate change issue, do not freaking trust anybody who is going to say, we need to stop this, and we need to go zero emissions by this time. Otherwise, the world is going to end in 12 years. And we also need to ban cow farts. And we also need to slaughter livestock so that so that our planet will live. Yeah, we need to kill cows to
save the cows.
Yeah, to save humanity. Except here's the thing, folks. By doing all that, you are also starving humanity. Hate to break it to you, but people love burgers and beef. More people like burgers and beef than plants.
Hashtag prime rib.
Yep. A fully plant-based diet is actually devastating to the human body. A fully plant-based diet reduces nutrients and nutrient levels that you get from having meat, that you can only get from having meat. So
I remember I think in biology class and science class in grade school that there were herbivores that are plant-only creatures, and there's carnivores. And I think humans are classified as mammals, but there's this we're omnivores, which means we need a balance of both the flesh and then also the plants. And
Yep.
well, I suppose that's science, but yeah, we'll have 3 rapid fire points when you're ready to move on with this article, just for some humor of it, with the fact that it's the House of Lords.
Well, actually, I'm done with it. So if you want to do those now, go ahead, because we're about ready to move on.
So the rapid fire points are, it's ironic in this article, we learned that, Rowan Atchison actually has some educational background to speak on this, with the electrical engineering and stuff. So that's actually kind of a funny bonus to it, because it's not like he doesn't know anything. The second point is that the irony of this coming out of the House of Lords, when lords used to be back in the days where you were at least a knight or higher, and you would lead troops and defend the realm, and you'd have your armies. And now, I mean, the lords complain that they're not getting enough money to basically have it. But the House of Lords does have a role to play, but it's just like this does not help their existence. And
They're
then finally,
pompous.
yeah, because it's like when's the last time you heard of like, like if you had a lord or a noble that was actually in the armed services that was actually doing combat. I think Prince Harry tried to do that, but that was just for a quick stint before this whole Merkelism. And then lastly, this thing, on a kind of a serious note, you go back to Ayn Rand's The Fountainhead, and that's why you have to read books. And this is like right out of that, because it's the government / it's the society against an individual, as opposed to Atlas Shrugged, which is like that. And here you have Rowan Atkinson. He just wrote an article that has a good scientific point and analysis, and you have a government agency that comes and says, "Hey, this isn't good." It's dead on Fountainhead, and encourage everybody to read that if you haven't. That's a phenomenal book, but it's just like, wow, this is literature on the page come to life. And then moving on.
Alrighty. So our final closer for tonight, Ewan McGregor begs fans to write to Disney for season 2 of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Now, folks, I actually, before we get to our article, I watched Kenobi season 1. I watched all of it. And that is the straw that broke the camel's back for me. I do not like to discuss Star Wars anymore unless it is the original trilogy or the EU. I saw this in this show that Kenobi wasn't even the main character. The main character was named Reva. I saw that they had a good actress for a childhood Leia, but it was for a different show called Leia that they should have made instead of putting Leia in this show, and where Obi-Wan abandons Luke Skywalker and watching over him, and instead chooses to save Leia. They got their technology wrong. They got their continuity screwed up, and they completely made a mockery out of the lore of Star Wars. So let's get into this article from Bounding Into Comics.
And
Star Wars.
Even if you give them all that, it still was not that great of a show.
No, it was not. So Star Wars lead Ewan McGregor makes desperate plea, asks fans to write to Disney for a second season of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Shout out to Spencer for this article. In making a request that perhaps only he and 7 other Disney Star Wars fans truly want to see fulfilled, Obi-Wan Kenobi has asked audiences to write to Disney in order to petition them for a second season of Disney Plus, or of the Disney Plus series. Help us, help us, Kenobi fans. You are our only hope. A longtime franchise star made his plea during a February 3rd panel appearance at MegaCon Orlando following the convention regarding his time on set filming the solo Star Wars series. McGregor revealed that at the end of the day, he was very happy with how the production ultimately turned out. Then why are you pleading to fans? So
this is actually a good tell of the power of the actual orthodox Star Wars fandom, because this is I genuinely think that Ewan McGregor is a good actor within the Star Wars, and he really plays. I think he's trying to basically make the best of a bad situation and play Obi-Wan the best he can. He just has to play it. He can't be free to develop the character as it truly is. But this is essentially him, and maybe Disney had him do it. But this is him basically begging almost on his knees, like, please do one more, because he probably likes playing this character, and he probably knows that they're not going to make, well, they don't have any plans to make strong male leads anymore. So he can kind of see that his time is over, passing off into the distance.
Yeah. So, moving on, the 6th episode really got me, He told the crowd, I was just sitting there with tears rolling down my face watching. I was so touched by it. I was so pleased, so happy. I'm just so happy that we managed to do it. And also that we did it like that. The Birds of Prey and Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn actor continued. It was originally going to be a movie, and I often thought, should it be a movie? And I kind of think it's great that we did it in that way, a longer story and hopefully a more satisfying as a result. It wasn't satisfying. You did shit that went against George Lucas himself, and you know that. I mean, folks, he was there when George Lucas said they only fight twice. Once on Mustafar and finally on the Death Star, and that's it. But no, they wanted to do the rematch of the century because the Force is female and because, well, we finally get Hayden Christensen back. Yay! Except, as good as Hayden Christensen is with a lightsaber, it still breaks the lore.
You tie in that little slice of Return of the Jedi. Ian McGregor thought he could instruct him just as well as Yoda. He was wrong.
Exactly. So, let's get to the next part. To this end, McGregor admitted, and I just hope we can do another one before turning and to ask the MegaCon attendees for their help in making it happen. Can everyone write to Disney? If we just, I'll give you some email addresses at the end. Just say, Dear Disney, let's have another. Let's have a bit more of Obi-Wan Kenobi, please. Dude, it would have been ridiculous if he had said, you're our only hope. Notably, this is not the first time McGregor has made public mention of his interest in picking up Kenobi's signature blue lightsaber for another television outing. During August 2023, Hollywood Reporter asked whether or not he and the actor had spitballed ideas of set on a potential season 2. You always think you're going to end a series like this in some magnificent way, but instead you end up in a parking lot with a second unit and hardly anybody there. It's always so anticlimactic, but as you and I finished our very last shot on the second unit, I was literally taking off my headphones. He was already pitching me ideas for season 2. Jesus Christ, Deborah Chow. Except that she actually sucked. She may have did a decent job with some of the Mandalorian episodes, but when it came to Obi-Wan Kenobi show, she sucked as a director. Turning her own interests in returning to a second season, there's another 10 years with plenty of stories. No, there is not. And I don't think it's off the board. It is a never say never situation, but we really did conceive this to be a limited series. As of writing, details of what McGregor's supposed pitches to Chow exactly entailed remain unknown. However, one can only hope that whatever he proposed was better than the first season's trenchcoat escape scene, otherwise known as perhaps the absolute dumbest moment in all of Star Wars canon and non-canon history.
It's the one-armed man scene from The Fugitive equivalent.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a good movie.
With that, I'm sorry, folks. I absolutely oh my god, my camera froze again.
Well, this is, the sad thing about a film franchise that's over, that ends on a good note, is it's sad because, you're not going to see another film. The end of Return of the Jedi, for a lot of fans was really sad because it was a great climactic ending, but it wasn't. Star Trek 6 for, Star Trek, that was that. We talked about that last time a bit with Admiral Kirk / Captain Kirk, and it was the last time the whole team was coming together, the original cast, and now there's not many left. Most have died. And are no longer with us. So what's sad about this is it's not like you had an Obi-Wan series that came out and it was really great and ended well, and it's just not going to work out to do it. So you only have that. You have essentially a dying series. And you have a dying series that basically is, quote, anticlimactic. And Ian McGregor knows that, and he kind of wants another season probably to get redemption, but he's probably not going to get it. Because again, the male lead is not the focus. They want the female lead, which is fine. But also, if you look at how these stories are, they're about people versus things. about big events that create conditions for people to do incredible deeds and actions and suffer hardships. I mean, Luke gets his hand cut off in one of the films of The Empire Strikes Back, and Obi-Wan literally has to watch his entire world fail, and all of the responsibilities he had as a Jedi and a Jedi Master fail. It's gone, and he doesn't know if Leia is ever going to be alive, and none of that comes through, and it's just hot off the press for Hollywood and Lucasfilm. And so it's a sad, slow death of a franchise with increasing irrelevance. And he probably sees that, and he's not going to get a chance at redemption. His hero journey ends, and it doesn't end heroically, and it's unfortunate. But you get what you act for. So
Yep. And the thing is, a lot of other people is like, "Oh, cool, we got to see Qui-Gon at the end of the Kenobi series." Except that Qui-Gon never finished his training. This is also admitted in the canon of Disney, folks. He never finished his training, so he can never appear physically or as a Force ghost. So
that is an excellent point. An excellent point about just common sense. Bravo. I just got to give you a shout out for that. That's an excellent point.
And not only that, when they go to the whole communication thing, the communicator, if you pay close attention, I actually did streams on reviewing Kenobi. That communicator, that circle with the 3 spike things going around it, that's actually a holo projector in episode 1. It's not a communicator. It is merely a holo projector. How are people communicating with a holo projector that only projects images and not communicating systems? It's, if you actually look in the visual dictionary for episode 1, you will see that. They couldn't even get their technology right. Not to mention that abhorrent scene that we discussed on the article, the escape with the that trench coat escape, but you had 2 snow speeders that could only fit 2 people at a time in the or in their ships. Not to mention the way they came into the hangar, there was no way that they could bank in time before smashing into the walls. Folks, I know the technology of Star Wars very well. You see, I have books upon books about the stuff. So yeah, they actually very much suck at their own continuity because they have no continuity. So
well, and that point is important because one of the great things at Lord of the Rings was the details. And what's cool about Star Trek and Star Wars is like there's actual they can make the mechanics of Star Wars that have those great cross sections that shows actually all the parts and how it would work when technology is not there. But that's what makes it really cool. Is it's plausible that these things could work. And so when you have you mentioned about the holocron projection, it's like, yeah, it's a communication. That was a recorded message. It wasn't something like that. So just having to disregard for the little things, it's like, well, now lightsabers aren't even that special because now you have these other crystals. It's like, well, the lightsaber was unique, but there's a scientific engineering to it that you can read about in the books about Luke has to actually construct his lightsaber, and it could blow up on him if he doesn't get it right. Oh well.
Yep, and not only that, folks, lightsabers, or a lot of people are calling out the lightsaber impalement in it, or efficacy failure. But they also, or a lot of the EU people who were complaining about it, forget to admit that even the EU had that problem.
Yeah.
Where people were getting impaled and surviving for extended periods of time. One of my favorite examples is Mace Windu. He got stabbed by Depa Billaba on Harun Kal, his home planet, when she went insane and literally put his or her own lightsaber into his gut. And he managed to stop her from twisting it and killing him, but it still put his her lightsaber through his abdomen. How did he
Carter-
survive?
He was carterized.
No, he wasn't.
Gosh.
But yeah, he survived.
Man.
Starkiller survived. A lot of people forget that Starkiller survived a lightsaber attack through the gut, or through the back and through the chest. But yeah, people love to say, but Disney sucks.
Dead. Yeah,
Yeah.
Qui-Gon Jinn
Disney
gets it right through the gut.
It's like, no, Disney is basically showing. Now, do I admit that Disney has, in fact, done it a lot more than the EU? Absolutely. So, yes, they are worse at doing it. But if you are going to make the argument that lightsabers suck because of Disney, no. Lightsabers have always had that inconsistency, even during the time of George Lucas's EU. And I say that it's George Lucas's EU because he approved of those books. They wouldn't have been published unless he approved of them. So yeah, sorry, but it is George Lucas's EU. Anyway, folks, that is going to be our topics. Thank you so much to everybody who tuned in. Novus was in the chat, Hardwick Bentho, Ruben Thomas Official, Christopher Freights, Netcat Media, Geek Detective Pierce, Vanya, and others. Thank you so much for tuning in. Stay tuned for Tuesday for the Fantastic Four versus Fan Four Stick original versus reboot theme stream. And Wednesday will be on Mars channel. Tuesday night is the Barroom Podcast. We're discussing on Mars channel Wednesday night, again, Underworld, the unrated edition. And yeah, so make sure that y'all watch that, check it out. Anyway, folks, this has been Orange Hat. Thank you to Novus for coming on.
Thanks, everybody.
And we will have another one for you all next week. So stay tuned and always remember to stay humble.
Take care, everyone.
So this thing doesn't want to. All right, there we go.